Transversal session 3, we're calling it here, and then we're going to go into the breakout sessions again this afternoon, and then at the final part of today we will have rapporteurs, as they were, from each of those breakout sessions from yesterday and today to give us feedback on what is being discussed in the smaller groups. Our first discussion here is going to be the experience from national initiatives and next steps towards deployment, the role of the States Representatives Group. And to moderate this, I'm very happy to hand over to Anna Larsson, Coordinator for Automation, Mobility, Business and Innovation at the RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. So Anna, take it away.
Thank you so much. Yes, so let's hear a bit from some of the different countries in Europe and their initiatives. We have Teresa Čižková from Czech Republic. She is the Deputy Director of ITS, Space Activities, R&D and Innovation Activities in the Ministry of Transport. And you might recognize her also because she is also the chair of the States Representative Group. Chair number 2. Malin Andersson from Sweden and Lindholmen Science Park. She's the program director for Drive Sweden, which is a strategic innovation program from Vinnova. And she has a background from urban planning, construction and infrastructure. She's worked at National Rail and Transport Administration and the Urban Transport Administration in the city of Gothenburg. Chair number 3. Olivier Gavot from French Ministry of Transport. Sorry. You're the Deputy Head of Department in charge of autonomous and connected mobility. And you have worked in infrastructure build within energy transport of road transport, and now since 3 years back approximately working more towards the connectivity of transports. Then chair number 4, Mikhail Nikovic from Austria. So you're representing the Federal Ministry for Climate Protection, Energy, Mobility and Technology, and you're coordinator for automated driving and have a Master of Mechatronics and Robotics from Vienna. Yep. And then chair number 5, Nina Schaap from Netherlands. And Nina is Senior Policy Advisor at the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. And you're also the initiator and the coordinator of the National Task Force for the Safe Introduction of Self-Driving Vehicles in the Netherlands. So that's an interesting task, I think. And last but not least, Ignacio González from the Ministry of Transport, Mobility and Urban Agenda from Spain. And you're the head of Research and Innovation Department, focusing on new technology, autonomous driving, ITS, and also coordinating EU funding calls. So warm welcome to all of you. So now we will hear a bit more specifically of the initiatives from your different countries. And we will start with you, Teresa, please.
Thank you very much, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm very pleased this trans session is taking place here at EUCAD. So we have the opportunity to introduce a bit from the national level, which is not very discussed, but it's very important and also very important for the synergies. And I will use my time to briefly introduce you the current state of the art in the Czech Republic, as well as some of the activities. So I will start with strategic framework, which is, I think, important to mention. It can be an integral part of the transport strategy and also the research strategy of the Czech Republic. Autonomous mobility is one of the strategic issues, in fact, and one of the strategic topics. And we are now in preparation. There is now a strategic plan for automated mobility, which would set some concrete measures and also concrete timeline. Of course, we are working quite heavily now on a legal framework, because it's mostly it's probably the most important issue in these times. So we heard a very interesting panel discussion in the morning about regulatory framework. So we are now about to update our legal framework in the Czech Republic based on the expert study. We received some recommendation what we should focus on, specifically on definitions and other issues related to liability, for example. But we also very much looking forward to continue our work with our international colleagues and European colleagues, because we see a lot of overlaps and synergies in national and European and international regulatory framework. Of course, SECAM partnership is important, not only topic, but let's say a whole initiative we are focusing on. We are trying to be active in the SRG SECAM partnership in the sense of being the chair of it, but also we are trying to encourage the stakeholders in the Czech Republic to take active role in the SECAM association. So we are very happy that we have some new members from the Czech Republic. For the development of SECAM, for the both testing and also for the deployment, infrastructure is very much needed. It has been also discussed today and yesterday. So we are taking some concrete steps in the Czech Republic. We are supporting some private initiatives regarding construction and further development of testing sites. But we have also initiated an activity which is called Catalog of Testing Sites, which is a web application for testing and research teams, covering some sections of road in the Czech Republic and making the testing easier. Of course, research and development and innovation, very important issue. We will focus our strength and also our funding on research. We have a national framework program for research. We have a new initiative called Innovation Mobility Hub, supporting startups and new ideas, also in the area of SECAM. And last but not least, I would mention our Ethics Commission that was established already some time ago and already delivered recommendations. It's also able to download them online in English. So if you're interested in this issue, I think we have done quite a good job on that. So please take a look at our website and take a look at the work of Ethics Commission. So for now, it would be all from my side, and looking forward to next discussion. So passing the floor back to Anna. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Great to hear about your progress. And I was thinking, when you worked with the legal updates, what were the largest challenges, you think? And do you have any tip-offs to how you could succeed in this struggle?
As I said, we are still in the middle of the process because we have quite complex legal basis. We need to adapt to new technologies, and it's quite usually that the technologies are a little bit further than the legal framework. But as I said, I think the most challenging but also helping thing is that we have already a regulatory framework introduced at the European level and international level. So now we need to find the best approach to adapt our legal framework for using the SA3 level vehicles and high automation level vehicles on the roads, because testing it's quite easy. In the Czech Republic there are quite clear conditions for testing, so testing is being done quite often. There are a lot of testing teams, but we need to clarify some of the definitions, as I said, because as our legal system was, of course, not adapted to automated driving before, so this is the main challenge. But I think we can also see a lot of inspiration in other countries that have been also working on their legal framework, and maybe see where they succeeded, where are maybe some gaps that we still need to bridge.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's move on and hear from Malin and Drive Sweden.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting. I'm really proud of being here. And Drive Sweden, a national strategic innovation program, there are 17 of these in Sweden, and they have the same task, basically. Decide upon a mutual vision, decide upon an innovation agenda, and run the program in order to drive towards the goals of Agenda 2030, increase knowledge and capacity in the sector, in our case, the mobility sector, strengthen Sweden companies and Sweden as a nation. And our vision is then that Sweden should take a leading role in leveraging digital technologies to shape more sustainable transport systems. And this is a vision that we share with our 200 partners from 20 countries. And if you can maybe find yourself in this picture, so we're very, very happy about having all these partners on board. And they are all from the triple helix, as you can see. There are small businesses, medium-sized, and also the large OEMs. And Lindholmen Science Park is hosting this program, and it's governed by our members. So it's governed by a board and a program office, which are manned by our members in kind. So the program logic is to be a neutral arena facilitating our partners' needs. And thus, we are a knowledge node for automated, connected, and shared transport and mobility. We develop and fund innovation projects. So we're kind of a very small national CCAM, basically. And so far, we have funded about 140 projects. And they are like the first autonomous bus tests in Sweden, ICT for control towers, a lot on MaaS, mobility as a service, sensors as a service, fleet management, machine-readable traffic rules, and so on. And as you can hear, that's a really broad range. You can say it's rather small projects, but they are kind of lubricant for the collaboration machinery, so to speak. So we've been talking very much about large-scale demonstrators, but I must stress these small collaboration projects also. Well, the program started in 2016 and ran on 12 years, and then there was a focus, very much focus, on automated driving and self-driving vehicles. That's kind of top of the pyramid, very much inspired by Mikael Ivery's work in the city of Gothenburg. The digital evolution is fundamental. And then we have a connection between vehicles, between infrastructure, between travelers, and so on, that share their data or basically communicate by using data, which then could be coordinated and in many cases automatically coordinated. And what we have realized these years is that there are so many business opportunities and benefits for the individual and for society on each and every level of these ones. And that is what we want to basically put into use. And at the same time, this is a ladder towards automated driving. And since we're an innovation program, we are really eager to put new ideas to the market, to bring them to implementation, to bring them into use. And we put a lot of effort in discussing project results and mutual learning within our program activities. And when we understand the mutual needs, different perspectives, we can kind of push where it's needed. And we deep dive in areas like the digital infrastructure, technologies, and as you can imagine, 5G is a very hot topic at the moment. We deep dive in policy and regulation, that like mutual understanding of the new AD legislation in the EU, and the national interpretation on those is not a piece of cake, as you heard during these days, but also spatial planning, business models, and behaviors among users and public. And we know that these kind of areas often stop new ideas to hit the market. So I'm very honored to be here. I'm very curious about this discussion, and I'm also a proud co-host of the CCM State Representative Group meeting that we are hosting in Gothenburg the 16th of May, together with Hamid Sarkampur and the Transport Administration. So I hope to see you then. You have your own.
Thank you, Malin. Just a question for you as well here. Considering that you put the automated driving and self-driving vehicles at the top, according to your experience, what are the main gaps in this pyramid?
Well, I guess there are gaps almost anywhere, but what is striking is that the gap between what's possibly technology possible and the skills in the rest of society, that gap is widened each day. So the expectations of what can be done from a technical point of view is not met, but the basic skills in public sector and in smaller companies. So that's a kind of a gap, and I think that goes in each and every one of these steps in the ladder.
Very interesting. Do you have any ideas on how we bridge these gaps?
Loads, but maybe we'll come back to that later.
I think so. Okay, thank you so much, Malin. We'll head on to Olivier and the French initiatives. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm also very happy to be here. So in France, we are in the last year of a large experiment program with 15 experiments, mainly focused on automated road transport system, aiming at public transport, including experiments with and without safety operators. So we addressed different kind of services. For instance, the last kilometers between train station and final destination, line between the different station, on-demand transport also. We test also different environments like city centers, suburbs, countryside also, and very rural areas, which is interesting use case in our opinion. And we test also different operation conditions like free flow, reserved lanes, private sites or closed sites like universities or hospitals. And as I said, we test the experiments were conducted with and without safety operators. So we use this experiment to build a shared knowledge between public services and the industry, knowledge about safety validation, about transport economics, and about also social acceptance. About safety, it's mainly about how to deal with local hazards and local scenarios. So the work is mainly focused on the scenarios and analysis of path. The analysis of costs and of transport economics showed us that the operating costs of public of transport services could be cut from 20 to 40%. So it's a large number. There is some uncertainties about this figure, but the magnitude is important. And we've got also social acceptance tracker, which shows that the willingness to use automated services is quite high. It's about 60%, but it's slowly decreasing this last year. So, as was mentioned this morning, we still have to convince people to use that kind of services. So the next phase for us is the next step is to deploy services, go beyond the experiment and deploy real services. So everything is ready to deploy services. We've got a legal framework which can be used by local authorities, for instance, to authorize and deploy services. So we are 100% ready to deploy services. But of course, local authorities has to be kind of empowered and helped to deploy these services. And next steps also are about connectivity, because connectivity will be probably of paramount importance to deal with complex environments, vulnerable road users issues, and so on. And supervision and remote intervention also are very important topics to dig and to be able to operate this kind of services. So that's our next step in France. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. So when you say you support local authorities' empowerment, do you mean a distribution of mandate, or are cities in France already quite self-governing when it comes to these topics?
Yeah, the cities in France are quite self-governing. They have all the competencies to develop services on their own territory. So legally, they are all the right to develop that kind of services. But as you know, the connected and automated mobility is not their number one issue. I will say there are a lot of other issues. As you know, also the subject is quite complicated and tricky. So we have to help them to share information, to produce some methodology, and yeah, it's mainly about sharing knowledge to help them use this framework, which is this legal framework, which is already ready.
Perfect, thank you. And that could also be a way of bridging then, Malin, I guess. So we'll move on to Mikael Nikovic in Austria. Please, Mikael.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for the invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, what comes into your mind when you think about Austria? What do you think about first? You eventually think about lakes and mountains, probably Mozart, but you don't think about traditional car manufacturers, right? And that's exactly what it is. There is excellence and competence in terms of infrastructure, in terms of automotive supplying industry, in terms of public transport systems, research and development, but there are no car manufacturers. And that's the reason why we developed, or why we established a use case-oriented approach already back in 2016, which means we don't want to automate everything everywhere, but we defined use cases of common interest, like automated public transport systems for first mile and last mile solutions. And these use cases have been defined together with stakeholders from industry, research developments, infrastructure operators, local authorities, citizens, general public, as well as several others. Based on these use cases, we established several strategies. We started with the Austrian Action Plan on Automated Driving back in 2016, where we focused on the vehicle. This was followed by the Austrian Action Program, where we focused on the vehicle and the infrastructure. And with our latest strategy, with the Austrian Action Plan for the digital transformation of the mobility sector, we are actually not only focusing on CCAM and automation, but much more we are focusing on the full ecosystem. And we are dealing with the question how to implement CCAM solutions, CCAM services within the existing ecosystem. Of course, there are several other strategies in terms of ITS, CITS, but just to mention some of them. What I want to show you here is the transformation we did, starting from a vehicle-centered approach towards an ecosystem one. And based on our strategies, we have funded more than 100 research projects. We have enabled the build-up of lighthouse projects dealing with platooning, with automated shuttles, the build-up of test environments for automated freight logistics solutions, as well as automated solutions for mobility of persons. But we're not only focused on the technological development, as we also provided guidelines for cities and public procurement showing them where to start or where to look at first. Of course, infrastructure is playing a major part, a very supportive role here. Here is an excellent competence in terms of digital infrastructure, especially when it comes to CITS. And the involvement of society, citizens, and public authorities was always a main issue from the very first beginning. So I was asked to give you some kind of best practice examples out of our activities. And I would start by saying again, focus on use cases. Of course, this might be sometimes frustrating and exhausting because you're only focusing on these use cases. But in the end, it helped us to define common goals, common strategies, and it also helped us to involve society, general public, as we heard it yesterday and today, to avoid misuse of technology, to increase the acceptance of technology. Because we still got questions like, why are you as ministry dealing with CCAM? What's the purpose or what's the demand for this? Why should we use automated public transport systems? Why do we focus on automated robo-taxis when there is an excellent public transport system in Vienna? So we still got these questions from citizens, from general public. And that's the reason why we try to involve them from the very first beginning in this process, to define our next steps together with citizens, together with disabled persons, to get all the kind of demands we need. Of course, infrastructure is a key element here, and with all our projects, we have seen that infrastructure is not only playing a supportive role here, it also helps us by the implementation of the use cases we want to address with, like the automated public transport systems, like automated freight logistics solutions or automated working machines. But of course, this cooperation with infrastructure also requires new form of cooperation, like alliances, like we have heard before from Drive Sweden. So we are working right now on an establishment of a new cooperation, of a new form of alliance, where we want to involve all stakeholders to work together to deploy these new services. Because when we started all our activities back in 2016, it was mainly us as ministry funding all the kind of participants, all the kind of stakeholders in Austria, gaining experience, building up competences. But now we are in a situation where we have nearly tested everything, and now it's time to go towards deployment and beyond research, and therefore we need new form of cooperation, new form of understanding and commitment, collaboration between all stakeholders involved. But of course, this requires a totally different form of cooperation as we had in the past. So I'm very happy to share our results, our information, our knowledge. And I'm very happy that within this SRG group we can discuss how to move on from research projects towards deployment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Interesting to hear about this societal engagement. Do you have any specific success tools that you used for having this broad societal engagement?
We have a company, Austriatech, which was mainly involved in this. So they set up a lot of workshops, a lot of dialogues, citizen dialogues, where we try to involve different kind of regions, because we also realized running a shuttle in the city of Vienna is not the same like running a shuttle in the urban area around Salzburg. So there is a totally difference in terms of acceptance, in terms of demand, and in order to get all this kind of feedback, we tried to set up different kind of workshops. But we also realized this kind of lighthouse projects we had, the projects with shuttles running around in the different parts all over Austria. This is kind on actively involvement of all citizens of the general public might be also key to success, because at the beginning they were very frustrated, they were very afraid of what this kind of technology is being able of dealing with, and after the trials they asked us, okay, why there is only one shuttle available, or where are the others, and can I now use it on a regular operation? But of course they also showed us where to look at in terms of inclusion, in terms of societal needs, in terms of infrastructural support, what it means being alone in such a vehicle during night, for example, without any kind of contact person. So all these questions came up during this involvement of the society, and that's the reason why I strongly commit to involve them from the very first beginning of the development, because otherwise there is the technology ready, but not the user to use it.
Perfect, thank you so much. Let's move on to you, Nina. And
Thank
hear
you.
about your project.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here. I'm about to tell you a story that was built in 5 months, or maybe more, with myself and a couple of very capable colleagues who are also sitting in the front here. And it will take us about 5 years to implement, and I have got only 5 minutes to share the highlights. So what I decided to do is start with my main takeaway. My main takeaway from what we've been doing so far in the Netherlands is that in order to take this development seriously, we have an awful lot of work to do. Yes, on technology development. Yes, on knowledge development. But mostly on the national implementation of the regulations that are currently in place. Managed introduction of automated driving systems requires intensive cooperation and a lot of work. And I'm here to tell you the highlights of what we're doing in the Netherlands. We have 5 goals for the introduction, and somehow this seems a bit off with the layout, but we have five goals for the managed introduction of automated driving systems in the Netherlands. The first is that whichever member states or type approval authority issues a type approval for automated driving in the Netherlands, the safe operation of this system has to be ensured. And this means that other type approval authorities have to understand something about our network, our ways of behavior, the way that the Netherlands is set up, our traffic rules. I will go into more detail if there's more time later. The second goal is that our own type approval, that is done by RDW on behalf of the Netherlands, will proceed well. And type approval for ADS is a whole different ballgame from previous type approval. It requires understanding of traffic rules, of human behavior, of network setup. So we're working closely together as a ministry with many of our executive agencies in order to make sure that we give a solid and safe type approval. For the third goal, and this is a very important one, we have to make sure that the human skills and responsibility are well defined, and that people are well trained, and that these responsibilities and laws can be enforced. And this requires, on the one hand, a change in, this requires that we harmonize the way that automated driving is recognized by, for instance, law enforcement officers. We can do this locally or nationally, or we can do this as a European Union, and I would strongly suggest that we look at harmonizing this. Also, responsibility and liability for people who are in these vehicles and who are surrounding them, and other traffic participants, needs to be very clear and trained and enforced. So for our fourth goal, it involves the general public and other stakeholders that will be involved in ADS on the roads. For instance, we need to think about post-crash protocols. What happens if an ambulance arrives in a situation where a self-driving vehicle was involved? What do they need to know? What does a road inspector need to know? And for our fifth goal, we want to make sure that we have a vision on which opportunities are best for the Netherlands, how we can make sure that this development actually benefits society, and that the correct use cases are set in place in the correct time. So what we've done in order to get here is set up an intensive cooperation with different ministries. That's actually the last part of the slide, if somebody could. Yes. With different ministries, executive agencies, the police department, our road authority, our national road authority, and also our local and regional road authorities, and intensive talks, obviously, with UNECE, European Commission, and all you other member states, in order to make sure that not only do we do this in a national way, but we make sure that the correct issues for harmonizations are done in a timely manner. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nina. It sounds like quite a task to harmonize.
That's why we made it a task force. Yes.
So well done there. But how do you actually manage to put these things on the overall agenda in all these different departments? What are your takeaways so far?
So I think, to make a long story short, once you explain to anybody what the ADS Implementing Act or the EUCAD UNECE regulation entails, everybody's eyes go a bit wider. They're like, wow, this affects me. This impacts my work. This impacts my work as a road authority. This impacts my work as a medical doctor on an ambulance. This impacts my work as a police officer. This impacts my work as a driver instructor for a driving school. So everybody's in. That was not the hard part. The hard part now is managing it, making sure that we all go in the same direction. We have the Dutch national story. We have the correct ways for harmonization. But we're getting there. We think we need about 5 years to get there.
Okay, great. Ignacio, please tell us about what you're doing in Spain.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be able to share our ideas and listen to yours. To have a little context, I will say my department is a newborn. It's only 3 weeks old, the Department of Sustainability and Innovation. But we've been experimenting with new technologies, innovation, automated driving, and new technologies for about 3 years now. So today I'm not going to talk about the strategy. I'm going to talk about a specific initiative that we started late last year, which is an innovative public procurement. The main difference between an innovative public procurement and a regular procurement is that in the regular public procurement, we need to have the solution perfectly defined. We need to have the technological aspect defined, the budget, and also the time that is going to be needed for the deployment of the solution. Everything has to be predefined. As every road administration knows, this is really slow. We need to define everything before. With this innovative public procurement, it allows us to not define at the beginning these kind of things, the budget, the time, or even the technical solution. We can just contract a functionality because we don't know what do we want to buy. Because we don't know the technology that is in the market. So that's why this procurement helps us solve these problems. So last year, my national road authority realized that we have some challenges regarding the planning, the construction and the maintenance, and also the safety in our roads. We know there is technology in the market or technology that could be developed. So that's why we launched this innovative public procurement that starts with preliminary market consultation. We defined 10 challenges and we showed them to the market. And we said, hey market, can you help us solve all these challenges with technology that you have or technology that you know you could have if we give you money and time. That was the first preliminary consultation, that this is the state that we are right now. We received the proposals for each of the challenges. We already went through every one of those and selected some. And by the end of this year, we hope to be implementing some solutions. But today I wanted to talk about the second challenge, which is the main focus is autonomous driving. The name is to promote the deployment of automated vehicles and extend its operational descent domain in our roads. This is because we noticed that the autonomous driving systems had disconnections in our roads, and we couldn't explain why. We wanted to study the road condition, the lane markings, the traffic signals, the GPS and mobile network coverage, everything that has to do with this kind of automation systems, to come up with ideas, to come up with solutions to implement in our roads, to be able to deploy safely this kind of vehicles. Because this is our main focus. We want to have this kind of vehicles in our roads, but we want them to be as safely as possible. So in the whole 10 challenges, we received 550 proposals. From those, 46 belong in the second challenge, the one that I talked about. And from those 46, I took 18 that I consider really high value, or really high interest. And those are divided in 3 groups. The first one, and the biggest one, with a 50% of the proposals, is about smart roads and V2X technology, which they talk about digital twin and connectivity in the vehicles. Also, we have, with 39% of the proposals, we have the ADS system audit, which is what I call it. But the main focus is to study these elements in the road condition, the pavement, the road markings, everything that has to do with this kind of systems, and help develop knowledge in order for us to modify our regulations, modify our laws to allow a safe deployment of this kind of vehicles. And last, we have R&D projects, which are pilot projects to target a specific problem, like circulation in tunnels or in intersections, for example. We had really nice conclusions in this preliminary market consultation. We are aware now that some technologies and that we would never know from them if we didn't ask the market. So that's why I encourage every national road authority to do this kind of public procurement, to ask the market what technologies do they have and what technologies they can develop. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Interesting to hear. Another type of approach. And how did these projects challenge your and question your legal framework already?
Yes. For example, we have some issues with road markings, for example. In some other challenges, like construction challenges, for example, we noticed that there is some technology in the market, some kind of road markings that are different from the ones that we have right now, and the regulatory framework doesn't allow to have this new kind of road marking. So that's one thing that we have to work on. And regarding autonomous vehicles, it could be anything. For now, the Spanish regulation doesn't allow more than level 2 driving. We are working on that to be able to deploy level 3. But from our part, our National Road Authority part, is to adapt this regulatory framework to the new technologies and the new ways to do things.
Perfect, thank you. So now we heard all your different perspectives and initiatives. How could we use these different national perspectives and competences for successful cooperation on European level. Teresa, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. We have just heard so many different approaches from member states, but not so much different, as I would say. So we see that all of us is focusing on slightly different topics, maybe with some slightly different approach. But in the end, we are focusing on the same issue. This is the deployment of CCAM in a user-centric way. I think we have a lot of experience in member states. Of course, some of the member states are more advanced in some specific topics. We have, of course, some slightly different circumstances or possibilities. But in the end, also with cooperation with the CCAM partnership, I think we can move the progress further. That's why I would try to highlight the importance of the States Representative Group, which is now possibly the most important platform for cooperation between the member states and CCAM partnership, also Commission, where we can discuss, but not only discuss, but really solve some problems, some long-term agendas, such as regulation, but also particular topics. For example, now we are focusing on testing procedures in member states, how they differ, how they could not differ so much, in fact. We will be focusing on that specifically in 2 weeks' time in Gothenburg, when our Swedish colleagues convene the next States Representative Group. And we have many other issues. You can see there are a lot of testing ongoing, a lot of research projects being implemented at the national level. We are trying to make our research database more complex. We have a significant help also with from FAME project, and I hope this is a kind of win-win situation, because also FAME project is helping us with some very valuable input, and we are trying to provide more information about the national initiatives and projects back to the FAME and to the knowledge base. And as I said, we have this very, very good and very effective platform of the States Representative Group. Most of the countries are very active in there. We have already a plan for the next year and a half about where we are going to have the meetings. So we have very active colleagues, and I'm really happy for that. And as you can see, there are a lot of issues being not only supported but implemented at the national level. We can be some kind of also linkage or some kind of platform for making the connection with the stakeholders at the national level, with regions, with cities, also with public, which is so very important and maybe sometimes a little bit forget. So I would highlight this, but there's of course much more, but I see this as very important.
Thank you so much. And Mikael, you would like to continue?
Yeah, I would like to come in here, if I may. Totally agree with what Teresa just mentioned. I think there are already a lot of existing projects, a lot of results already there. What's missing is this kind of link between ending a project and going into operation or deployment. And here I see the great benefit of the SRG group, because within this group we can define building blocks of common interest we would like to work on. And I'm also happy to see that the FAME project might be the one of the most important projects this time, because we try to identify differences and synergies between the different member states. We try to figure out where we can work on, or where we should talk about, where we should discuss about. And by defining building blocks, for example, with the next meeting, which takes place in Sweden in 2 weeks, we decided to talk about the role of the infrastructure operators and where we should look at. And I think if we can continue on that, we're in a good way, because there are as we have heard yesterday, the RTR conferences, there are the multi-cluster meetings. We have this conference, and now we have the SRG group. Yes, meeting twice a year won't be enough to discuss about everything, but it's a good start. And we should start from here and try to implement all stakeholders which should be on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And as this deployment will require new forms of collaboration and alliances, it could also be interesting to talk about how to cooperate between infrastructure operators, as you say, telecoms, manufacturers, public authorities in the future, and where should we start the process, and it could also be around testing upon running operations. Anyone would like to comment on that? Olivier, you look ready.
Yeah, as I mentioned, now we are really aiming at deployment and beyond the experiments to develop the knowledge on safety validation, transport economics, business models. So it's a main focus for us. Sorry. And however, we think that maybe new functionalities could be tested and use the large deployments to test new functionalities. And we think that connectivity is probably a key enabler to go further and to deal with higher commercial speeds, complex environments. And of course, connectivity use cases implies tight interactions between all the actors you mentioned, road operators, car manufacturers, telecommunications, companies, and so on. And a lot has been done about connectivity use case by different platforms like the C-Roads platform, the 5G AA, Car2Air consortium, and so on. And sorry, I probably forget some. There's a lot of use cases have been defined. There is about 300 use cases, connectivity use cases defined. So it's a lot, and some of them are deployed in France. We are deploying about 40 use cases, mainly I2V. Use cases, so a lot has already been done in the connectivity use cases, and I think it's a great achievement. Nonetheless, we have to go further to deal with V2V use cases and vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to vulnerable road user use cases also, because of course vulnerable road user is a main concern. And so we have also to define use cases for specific use cases for transport, public transport, for remote intervention and supervision. So in France, we are working about identifying all these use cases, identifying which use cases among the 300 are the most relevant for the for security, and we have quite precise security studies which tells us which are the main scenarios that we have to address in terms of connectivity. And once this work will be done, we will have to identify which kind of needs have these use cases in terms of latency, data rate, and so on. And so we will be able to have a more clear view of for the analysis of different technologies, such as ITS, G5, 5G, non-terrestrial network, and the satellite constellation IRIS². So, which brings resilience and coverage. So once we have all the needs of the prioritized use case, we will be able to have analyze more in a more precise way the best technology for what kind of use case. So in France, we are in this process with all the actors, of course. And one important thing also will be the security validation of the connectivity, which when connectivity will be safety critical. Of course, the connectivity will have to be validated also. So this is our next steps with, of course, all the actors involved.
Wow. Arlene, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think like in 2016 there were a lot talking about, what happened when the mobile phone came. But we're not really turning a good device into an even better device. We are changing a societal system. We are changing a socio-technical regime. And that's a lot more complex than changing a good device into an even better device. So, and that means in this socio-technical regime, there are so many parts of society taking part. We heard that yesterday in the breakout sessions. And I think every part of the system must do their part. They must be invited to do their own transformation. And this is how we can bridge the gap. And collaboration and mutual learning is key here. And I think that is also one way to put pilot into implementation. If you invite the persons or the people or the actors that are able to implement the technology into the development, then they are much more eager in putting the technology in place. And this is what we've been doing in some projects. I mean, we've been starting to using the technology. Geofencing has been used for reducing speeds of heavy vehicles in front of schools in the city of Gothenburg in collaboration with AB Volvo. That works perfectly well. Just come on, just scale it and let's see what's happened on the system then when a lot of people do it. And a lot of situations. We have specific domains, fleets, road circumstances that also want to test their value chain, like develop their own level of interaction in all these parts of the CCAM network. And so, for example, winter maintenance for public transport. When there's a heavy snowfall, the bus drivers call in sick because they don't really like that kind of driving situations. They are afraid, the vehicles break down, people are very much annoyed. And what happens if drivers and the manufacturers or the maintenance, the transport operator, the fleet management, they all talk to each other these days. Connected with the slippery road alarm systems in the vehicles. What happens then? Well, yes, the winter maintenance becomes a lot more better. The bus drivers are safe and secure, and the public transport is reliable. And here you got a full CCM working system and a good business as well. So just let's roll out. And somebody said, like, ICT development is here to stay. And the future is really, really hard to predict. So I think that's a very important thing to discuss within this state representative group also. What kind of planning principles should be chosen when the technology change all the time? So, and we know that bits and pieces of the AD technology already are being rolled out. They are in the new vehicles. So if vehicles slow down automatically when queuing up, should transport authorities still provide signs telling you there is going to be a queue? Or should they put their money somewhere else? So these kinds of like scenarios or forecasts, I think we need to do them all the time and learn from each other there. What is possible? What will be happening in the vehicle industry? What will be rolled out? And how can we adapt to that? But also, where technology roll up with these new vehicles, when you drive a vehicle with speed assistant in an area with 30 km/h, suddenly it tells you it's 70. Why that? Because it's a tunnel underneath. And what happens if my car turns into 70 km/h then, when I'm in a housing area? That these kind of risk reduction thinking, I think, authorities need to take into consideration. So, and also this game changer, 5G, that is now put into place. I'm very, very curious about this North Star project and the RISE testbed Dasta Zero was going on there. So this kind of collaboration that you, Teresa, is head of now in the RG group is brilliant because we need to discuss, we need to talk to each other, we need to interact in order to put this in place. in a sustainable and business-friendly way.
Thank you so much. Really good insights. Time is about to run out. I don't know if we should stretch it for a last question. We've been talking about these large-scale demonstrations a lot these days, which are important to really stretch the vision every now and then and to be able to see the gaps also. What measure do we need to be able to do these large-scale demonstrations to a larger extent?
Yes, I think this question has everything to do with the previous one. You've talked about partnerships or collaboration. I think one of the most important things we can do is establish partnerships between all the stakeholders. And I think everyone has a role, everyone has a part that they can help on. For example, we have the research institutions or the vehicle manufacturers that they need to be able to establish or to realize what are the challenges of each country and develop technology that can function in roads with different characteristics. Other examples are mobile network operators, and that they need to optimize the network in this cross-border place to guarantee the coverage all along the cross-border section. Also, there is a framework and a regulatory framework and law problem that we have that the national road authorities can solve by establishing, for example, systems that can help authorize and validate this kind of projects or this kind of large-scale demonstrations to make it easier. And also these national road authorities can establish a common ODD. And to harmonize everything, we have to go back to the strategic level and have important dialogues between countries to establish a common ground, establish a common framework, and the regulatory framework can help with this issue.
Thank you, Ignacio. I think, Nina, you wanted to come in as well.
Well,
last words.
Very shortly, and it actually answers part of your previous question in this one. I feel like we're still often caught in a discussion that actually goes back to technology push. And I feel like we need to expand the narrative about that. We need to start thinking about large-scale testing, not only to test technology, but to test the impacts on society. What do we need to do to make this work for us? We need to expand our knowledge development from looking into the future, but also to looking to now and starting to figure out how to monitor the effects and how to make sure that we as governments or authorities or people from academia can actually contribute to the best way to deploy this without this being a technology push. And that can be very challenging because as I said, managing all these different organizations together in the Netherlands is quite the challenge. We all have different cultures, different languages, different drives, but I think we need to start and speak the same language and expand the narrative together.
Thank you so much, and that will be the last word of this panel. I want to thank you so much for participating and for all your good insights. A round of applause I think they deserve.